all of a sudden it just stops, and it must, it's incredibly scary. It was incredibly scary for me. I was lucky I had things going on, but when it does just end, it is such a weird thing. I mean, you've done this thing every single day of your life. I left school at 16 and retired at 38, 22 years of that routine, bang, 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 and then it just stops, and like, whoa, now I've got to think for myself.
I'm very excited now, Callum.
I can tell.
As a Liverpool fan, Peter Crouch is in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. You've written a new book, How to Be an Ex-Footballer, out this week. Really interesting how you go through stuff, because, we kind of expect ex-footballers to be pundits, maybe the odd politician. You found men of the cloth and all sorts of things in this book.
We have, yeah. Gavin Peacock, I played with Gavin Peacock. He's a priest now in Canada. But yeah, I mean, some weird and wonderful jobs. Like you say, I think the general path that footballers go in, it's punditry or coaching. I did my coaching badges when I was still playing, and I did my first book, and that sort of took me in the media direction. But so many people we interviewed. Ian Dazoo is a Portsmouth player, a Wigan player that I played against. He's now a detective in Holland, in narcotics division. So he's chasing drug dealers around Amsterdam, which is amazing to think about. Actors, some people, we interviewed so many people. Brett Sancho is a player I played against in the World Cup for Trinidad. He's Minister of Sport for Trinidad. George Weah, obviously Liberian president. Some of the things we got into was were it was amazing to find out these things. But when you interview them, it's just incredible. And
it must be slightly terrifying as a footballer. I mean, I've listened to your podcast lots, and I know you've talked about how, you've had your underwear washed by clubs and just footballers do nothing for themselves. So it must be terrifying when you suddenly then you finish, and it can be so abrupt. We don't want you anymore. We're not renewing your contract. Off you go. Knowing what to do and where to go. Yeah,
like you say, I mean, we weren't entrusted to even have our passports. We had to hand them in at the start of the week if we were travelling in Europe. The next week it was, everything sort of was done, and then all of a sudden it's over, right? Bang, the last game or injury or something just happens, and you're just thrust into the real world. And it's quite funny watching footballers adapt to that. I know I was very lucky. Obviously, I suppose I played for England and I had a profile and I could go into something. But I often wonder about players, in League Two that might not have that profile. That all of a sudden it just stops, and it must, it's incredibly scary. It was incredibly scary for me. I was lucky I had things going on, but when it does just end, it is such a weird thing. I mean, you've done this thing every single day of your life. I left school at 16 and retired at 38, 22 years of that routine, bang, 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 and then it just stops, and like, whoa, now I've got to think for myself.
And I'm interested that you wrote in the book about finances as well, and how you can do your Pythagoras theorem, but, mortgages, interest rates, stuff that actually we need to know and kids need to know, just not taught at school.
Well, I always wonder about it. Yeah, it's something that's always bothered me. I'm like, we don't learn about mortgages at school. We don't learn about all financial, pensions, where to put our money, and overdrafts, or how to deal with bank accounts. But I know Pythagoras theorem off by heart, like that. Algebra,
go on then.
Not a problem. It's 3.1. Why? It's been a long time. But things. I don't know. There's certain things that you learn at school. I think, what's absolutely no use to me whatsoever. But the things that we all have to deal with, we don't learn.
It's the conversation I'm having with 13-year-old at the moment with her maths. Why am I learning this, Mum? I'm never going to need it, and I can't really argue against that. Kind of quite difficult. Another thing you talk about in the book, which it really resonates, and I found it quite sad in a way, and I don't mean this like in a patronising way, but the fact that you talk about you don't have that many what you would regard as real friends in football because of the brutal nature of the transfer market, your different ends of the country, even different countries potentially.
Yeah, but I think it's in every walk of life. I think, I'm sure you've got lots of great friends at this radio station. But what I'm saying, if you go and work for Yorkshire Radio, I assume you'd speak to each other, but you just lose touch. Yeah. You just lose contact, and you want to call them and you love them. And every time you saw them again, you would be really friendly, big hug, hellos. But you just, what I class real friends as is people that you pick the phone up to, not just in a WhatsApp group or, people that you call and say, how are you? We should meet up. And I think, you don't really sort of have a handful of people across so many clubs that I've played for over a 20-year career that I would do that with. And I think that's the same in any walk of life. That's just life. People are busy.
Just wondering at the moment, in light of the current political climate, if you've got any tips for anybody who might be about to lose their job, whether they might be a chancellor or a prime minister, how you adapt, what you do when you suddenly maybe find that you don't have the job you want.
Oh God! Well, I was scared, but I'll have to say, obviously, if I'm talking to young footballers, if they are approaching a time where they think it might be coming to an end with injury and stuff like that, it's just planning. Like I definitely did my coaching badges while I was still playing. I did the book and the podcast while I was still playing, and just so I just tried to be as seamless as possible. As much as I love, watching Lorraine and This Morning, I didn't want to be sitting there on the Monday morning, having no real goal in life, watching that, and then finding myself, it's quite fun this, and then picking up the kids and not having a goal or a something to do every single day. I was so scared about that I'd sort of planned for it beforehand. But yeah, I'd advise whatever you want to get into next, I would plan while you're playing. I
want to ask you about the World Cup, because obviously lots of people talking about whether Qatar should really even be staging it when you think about human rights abuses, the fact that homosexuality is illegal. How much do players think about, or indeed care about, where a tournament is actually held?
Yeah, I think it's slightly different this year. I think players might have an opinion on it, of course, but it's totally out of our hands as players, and we have enough to focus on with performance and getting you just expect the people above you and the people in power to take care of that stuff, and that's how I always saw it. I'd be like, you'd like to entrust the people above you to make the right decisions, and of course we're not getting away from the fact that the tournament is in Qatar now, and as a player, obviously for me, you don't get many opportunities to play in World Cups. I had 2. I was very fortunate, but I would solely be concentrating on what I have to do on the pitch.
It's interesting, Gary Lineker's been speaking to the Mirror today. I don't see in the front of the Mirror. He says there's 2 Premier League stars who are close to coming out as gay. I hope they do it during the World Cup. I mean, that's a huge amount of pressure to put on any player anytime. He's also talking about how they will talk about homophobia and human rights on screen. We know that Harry Kane is going to wear the rainbow armband as well. Is that important, do you think, that players are starting to get involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, it sends the right message. I mean, that's our message. It's equality for all. In this country, we'd like to think so. And yeah, the rainbow armband is a stance, but I mean, how far does it go? I don't know. That is obviously making an impact, but is it making a big enough impact? Is it are we allowed to make any kind of impacts? Like where are the rules? Where are the boundaries? Nobody seems to know. That's what's so strange about this tournament.
How much can players talk to the FA about stuff and kind of influence policy? I'm always fascinated by that.
I don't. I think it's got stronger with every passing season. It seems to be. I think player power was something that was talked about. Certainly when I was in the England squad in sort of 2006, but now we see with social media, players are promoting themselves. They're getting more of a voice. Being a lot of power for good. We've seen obviously Harry Kane's just come out recently and setting up his charity's foundation. They're doing lots of good things. Marcus Rashford, obviously, that was incredible what he achieved. So yeah, players do have a voice now, and I think it was probably, my policy as a player was shut up and play football. that was my thing. But there's plenty of people doing a lot of good. So good luck to them.
Is that also was that your policy as well, slightly because you don't want to say the wrong thing and you don't want to get picked up?
Well, you think like I'm talking Harry Kane, like he's England captain. I think you have more of a voice in that. In all honesty, I was really pleased to be in the England squad. I didn't want to be the person that, this is what I think. I didn't have all these opinions. I've got my opinions, obviously, with my family and friends behind closed doors, but I didn't have the stature of David Beckham, John Terry, Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard. I knew I was just behind Wayne Rooney and Michael Owen in the forward line. I didn't want to be upsetting people with my opinions. I was very much solely concentrated on football. But having said that, I do really enjoy players who have opinions, and I love the fact that a lot of them are making change for the better.
You've always been so self-deprecating. You're always like, oh, I wasn't that good. I was just like this tall bloke that they just used to kick the ball to. But you have always said that. You said it on the podcast and everything, that you kind of were a bit amazed that you did as well as you did. You do put yourself down.
No, do you know what? I had tremendous faith in my own ability. I would not have played for England if I didn't. If I didn't think I should be there, I would have been found out very, very quickly. I knew I had the ability to be there. What I've been honest about is just my flaws and the weird world that I've been in. I deserve to play for England, and I don't back down on that. I'm confident. Yeah. But there were times, obviously, as a young person, that maybe I wasn't, and I think that's why I think people can relate, because it was tough. It was a struggle for me. I looked different. I didn't look like an average footballer. So overcoming those kind of stereotypes and then getting a lot of stick on the terraces, sort of, I think, made me the person I am today.
Yeah. Did you find then that in becoming a professional footballer, some people were like, you're not right, the build and everything? Did people just try to constantly say you're not going to make it?
Oh God, yeah, like constantly. Yeah, I was lucky I had a good support system around me. Talking about my mum and dad. But yeah, I mean, it's a harsh world. Like, football is a harsh world. There's there's no denying that. I think even now we see it, but it was certainly worse when I was coming through, and worse again in the 80s and the 70s. But overcoming that was something I'm very proud of, and not looking like your average footballer and then breaking through and sort of changing people's opinion. And I felt like I was forever proving myself, because I didn't look like an England player, what an England player should look like. But again, I'm sitting here now very proud of the fact that I managed to change that.
Before I let you go, what do you miss most about being a professional footballer?
Oh, just the day in, like, day out stuff, really. The thing is, like, people always ask me, oh, do you miss it? And I don't, because I feel like that was a period of my life where I was so lucky to have, and I did things that I never thought I'd dream of, but that's gone, and now I'm on to something else, and that's an amazing memory. But the day-to-day kind of going in and at the fun we had and doing something you love every single day and keeping fit and healthy and active and...
not people saying it screaming when you score. Is that not the moment?
You know what? Obviously, scoring a goal is the best thing that you can do. But I had those moments, and I feel like I was lucky to have them, and I'll cherish them forever. But the day-to-day stuff, when I wake up and I'd go in, and we just have the best time ever with your mates, and you'd do something that you'd love, and you'd compete and then go home. Like, that is just the general day-to-day thing was the best. It was the best job in the world for me.
Right, give us a plug for your book then. Out today? No, yesterday it was out.
Yesterday. Yeah. But well, like I say, it's a weird and wonderful take on sort of being an ex-footballer, what people go into. There's a section on being, troubled, which I think some players are, and thankfully I've had interviews from people that have had problems. But most of the book is talking about footballers and what they get into, and my personal experience of being a retired player.
Brilliant. Peter, thank you so much for coming in. Really great
Pleasure.
to see you.